Tyson, hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm very good. Tell me about Prisoner's Daughter. What did you think? What did you think of the reaction to the film? What's it like to be back at TIFF with Catherine Hardwicke?
Um, Being back at TIFF with Catherine was such a gift. You know, the first time I did it was with Tony Collette and Drew Barrymore for a film we had called "Miss You Already," and this time, I'm 10 years older almost. I think since I did that. So this time, it was such a more deeply, I don't know, profound honor because walking down a carpet with the King Brian Cox was truly a
Yeah.
pinch me kind of moment.
Let's get that right out of the way
I
right
mean,
now.
right there, it's low hanging fruit. I know.
Tell me about working with Brian.
Mr. Cox.
You don't
Uh,
get too many scenes together.
we don't, but the ones that we had were very intense. Where in the film, I play someone named Tyler who's very much at odds with the father of my ex-wife for a lot of misplaced reasons.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, the first day on set with Brian was, so surreal because not only is it a scene where he's ultimately confronting and beating the shit out of me, uh, it was also I had to stare down the barrel of a Brian Cox gaze and
Mhm.
uh, and put my chin up to his and be very much against everything he was about. So it was a surreal way to start my introduction to Brian Cox.
Mhm. So interesting to see in this movie too that you're a musician, but you're a drummer or a sort of former. I know you play many instruments, but is drums one of them?
Yeah, I do. I can kind of do them all okay.
Mhm.
I think that's what makes you a songwriter. You're like, well, I'm not going to be a virtuoso, so I guess I better sing what's in my heart. But yeah, playing drums for this movie was so fun because I got to also write the song that I played for Kat. The song was very inspirational for me, like for music. It's Joni Mitchell says, she paints because when she would run out of oxygen in the land of songwriting, that she could always go paint. And that was right when I got this film. I just heard music for days,
Mm.
and so it was cool. I got to write the song for my character, play drums, and try to convince the world that I could be a drummer for.
You had three, I think. It's on the credits, three songs on the soundtrack, but listed as sort of different um, collaborators or different people that you were working with as well.
Yeah, for the film. When when I read the script, which it was like I didn't really put it down. It was really
Mhm.
um, it was a beautiful family drama, and I immediately heard this song in my head, which ultimately became the end title for the film, called "Shotgun Clown," in which I got to reach out to one of my heroes. I don't know how old you are, but when I was a kid in high school, I'd listen to college radio, and there was this band called Eels. They had this song called "Novocaine for the Soul" that was like kind of commercial, but then they also did like the soundtrack for most of the Shrek songs. Um, and I reached out to this guy blindly through his manager. I was like, "Hey, man," and I talked to him for like 2 hours about this film and about this song, and he at the end of it, he's like, "Yeah, cool, man. Um, think you can get me in the movie?" and so and so there was this part of in the opening. My character comes in to sort of confront his ex-wife Maxine, played by Kate, and there's a guy at the taco stand that confronts me and says, "Hey man, you got to get out of here." And it's E from Eels. I got to
Mm.
I got to knock him on his ass, which was really funny.
I'm gonna
It's a
watch
funny way.
again.
This film basically was filled with me taking all of my heroes and putting them in front of me and just either punching them or having them punch me.
Right.
That was the
Um, I'm gonna watch again just to catch all of the Easter eggs, the references that you're
Yeah,
making
totally.
now. So what was it with Catherine in particular that I've had a chance to interview her before, and she
Oh,
is,
so you know,
yeah, I know,
she's a wild cat.
she
She's great.
is, and I think what I liked so much about this movie is that it looks incredible. She has a way of filming that it just lights up. And as I was saying before, you in particular are, uh, I don't like you in the film at all, but I like
Okay.
seeing you. I like when you show up. You're a welcome presence, even though I'm not quite sure I quite dig you. So what do
I'll
you
take
know?
that.
You have the familiarity with Catherine, but what do you tap into?
What for the role?
Hmm.
You
How do you
know,
find the balance of sort of unlikable, but still we want to be like around you or see what you have to say?
it's funny. Everybody has their approach, right? That's one thing I've learned doing this for a little bit now. You know, being around other actors, you realize that it's almost like witchcraft, in that no one shares really like true actor. The guys that I know that really that I hold a high respect for, that I just happen to know. They don't talk about their process much, and I was always curious about that, because I myself hadn't found my process. You know, you're constantly learning, and this was a film where it, the moment I read it, I immediately thought of someone in my past who had died because of addiction, um, and he's a great guy. And to me, the approach to Tyler was immediately, oh, well, I can see how they haven't found somebody to be Tyler yet, because Kat called me on a like a Saturday night saying, Ty, we can't find this guy. I know it's a dark role, and you just had a kid. I just had a kid like 2 weeks prior.
Mm.
My wife had
Yeah.
a child. We welcomed it,
Right.
and and she was like, I don't know if you want to do this because it's pretty heavy, and she knew I'd done a film in the past where I had a really intense experience, sort of like losing myself in a role, which is something that is dangerous. It's a bit of the magic. So anyway, long story short, I immediately just wanted to give Tyler a heart. I was like, that's what's missing from something that's, I guess, as tropey as this. And his heart is his love for his son.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I tried to make that come across, because it's hard to make an addict that could be seen two-dimensional as just the bad asshole trope, um, you know, to be just one thing. He's bad. He's an addict. I hate
What
characters like that.
what works so well too, and based on your story, I'm surprised about this. Sometimes in movies, you see sort of the movie kid looks absolutely nothing like the parents, but it looks like you and Kate could have had Chris. He could be your kid. He looks like your kid. He looks like a little bit of both of you.
Well, then I'm gonna break some story. That is our child.
Ah,
no, no, Chris is incredible. Yeah, no, the moment I saw him, I was like, my wife's like, oh my God, he's got your curly hair and blue eyes, and you know, looks like Kate too. Yeah, it was a kismet moment, I think.
mhm.
They had that kid already in place, and it's like I came along and I looked just like a daddy, sort of. It really was jarring though, because I had just become a father, like I said, like 2 weeks before I got this gig. So I was really like, I was just so open in my approach to him. I was like, "What's up, man? How you doing, son?" I was already ready to be a father.
I gotta jump ahead then because I gotta let you know we talked to your wife for Cowboy Bebop.
Nice.
Julian Vicious. That was a great show, by the way, and really had a lot of the tone was so good. I was
I
very
like that too.
disappointed personally that it didn't receive more seasons and
Yeah,
more.
yeah. I think it needed to find its footing. I think there were moments where it did, and it was really beautiful, and yes, tonally like pitch perfect. And then it would kind of stagger. Yeah, it was really a trying experience during COVID. You know, I
Mhm.
think they were down there shooting it for like 10 months.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, but my lady kills it in
Yeah.
Cowboy Bebop. She's great.
Okay, and then I got to jump it back for you too. Preacher. I talked to your co-star Julianne Emery, who was on set when you did the last season in Australia,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah,
Moved the
she's fantastic.
production over. We connected with a few people from the show as well, too. Graham McTavish and Pip Torrens and Dominic.
Pip's the
Rachel.
best. Pip's the
Yeah. Oh
best.
man. And to see him go from being Air Star to being the in the Crown, being
Oh, I know, right?
It's
Yeah,
like,
no,
is this the
that
same
was
guy? And
always.
then into Succession too.
I'll
Into
never.
this season of Succession as the twit father, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I'll never forget when he was filming this like really horrific scene with Dominic where they're wrestling um, in entrails. Pip would go back and read his book covered in blood. It was the fun. He would be there, this quaint Englishman, cross-legged, waiting to be called back to set, just drenched in fake blood. It was the greatest juxtaposition ever. Class to the end.
that show, I think of how much The Boys has taken off, and you have a
Yeah.
lot of sort of the same creative, same graphic novel
Same guy,
art
same production. Yeah,
that
yeah,
could
yeah,
have,
yeah.
and the way that show's hit. I thought Preacher and some of the things that you managed to get away with on that show, just how subversive it was. It was
It was pretty great, man. I felt it was a joy every day to go into that set to be around Ruth and Joe and Dom. Yeah, it was so fun. Yeah, but yes, they got away with murder.
and to be able to play
Biblical murder.
biblical, and you were Humperdoo, and you were all the clones as well too. And that tap dance is still, we're just still thinking
uh,
about the tap
Burned
dance.
into your brain for life.
Yeah. But would you consider that to be when you were, that was sort of like maybe your biggest role at the time, or like a career sort of?
For me, it was like now you're working. I worked for 3 seasons on that, so it was like, yeah, you're working as an actor. Granted, you playing a very physical character. Like to me, that was cutting my teeth. Like playing Humperdoo. It's so funny when you see ridiculous characters, or that you would just write off as ridiculous. It takes so much work to channel that stuff, man. It was a lot finding Humperdoo, and you would never really like you wouldn't think twice about it. But it's like a lot goes into those crazy characters that you see.
When was this your consideration for being? I mean, you still, the band is together. You're performing
Yeah,
shows. I see that you still got shows going on. But
yeah.
when did you consider that your path was going to sort of go in this direction, where you were going to continue to do music, but acting was going to become a thing for you?
I always performed as this guy on stage, as this character, and I never really tapped into the juxtaposition of it, or just the fact that it was how I was functioning, because we were touring so ridiculously, and you have to be on. And when you're on, you can either count it as just a part of yourself, or you can just kind of disassociate completely and like be the guy that this giant hall wants for the evening. And that was character work for me. Like that, I created this guy, and to me, getting to do it in a confined, intimate space, like acting with someone in a room, in a scene, in a space that you don't have to travel every day, where you get to, you know, just kind of really only be this soothsayer for a living. Like that was, I mean, that's been the greatest gift from my transition from playing with this band all the time in my life, next to my son and my wife.
Yeah. And I'm seeing it in this movie, and in general, you're holding your own. I mean, it really feels
Cheers.
like something. You're not a tourist. You belong. You're there.
I
In this
mean,
one, you get to do.
that means a whole lot. No one's said that to me, so thank you. Like that truly means a lot, because I'm truly giving it my all.
In this movie, you get to do music and act. But what is there, like? What would you like to do? What are your goals?
You know, kind of developing a little further some properties that I've kind of tried to cultivate myself from my life experience. A good friend of mine, this great playwright, she always said, I've been writing only about one experience my entire career, writing what you know. And so, yeah, acting to me is of course my first love in this sort of new venture of my life, but I really love writing for the films that I'm in. Like I've done that a couple times now, and it's such a gift. I love kind of being the jack of all for the post-production part of it. I even scored one part of this, like I don't want to give it away, but towards the end of the film, uh,
Mm, hmm.
that scene, I scored that,
Yeah.
and it was really cool to be able to contribute in a visual way, and of course, with what I do for a living.
Hmm. One of the things that TIFF is highlighting this year, and I think is essential, is female filmmakers. You know, Catherine Hardwicke has been making great films for a long time.
Yeah.
But what do you feel like for her and in general? What do you like to look for in a leader, in a director?
Catherine's vision for her films comes from a very specific place. I think it starts, of course it does. I mean, you should see her house whenever she starts getting an idea. It just immediately becomes a visual story through aesthetic. She's immediately drawn to she like how a film looks, how it feels tonally, all that stuff. That's the way she thinks. I think about stories, because if she's drawn to the story, well, there's the story. I am the world, and so, you know, what I look for anybody to help guide me is communication and just not blind support. I mean, Catherine's very vocal about just sort of like steering a scene, not necessarily identifying even a single person in it. She'll just sort of like be a really nice guide to, if especially on this film, for some of the engagements Kate and I had, it was just about, dialing a bit of intimacy without making it feel too much. Like that was like one thing that I think really wanted to stay away from, was making it look like Maxine might have some sort of, you know, forgiveness for him, because that
Yeah.
was a really delicate balance. She was willing to forgive him ultimately, but you know, she wasn't close.
Based on you coming into the film, maybe in later stages, you and Kate have great interaction as well too. You know, even if you are trying to drive a wedge, I can feel a history. I can feel a shared history. What
Oh,
do you
cheers.
what,
Then
what
that's, I
is
guess.
what does she bring to the experience?
you know, Kate is. I've always been a fan of Kate since, I think, what was it called, Days of Disco and Broke Down Palace.
Yeah.
Like, she's an incredible actress, and I think I don't I those films were there's been some time in between that sort of approach, I think, maybe to her, what she wants to do,
Hmm.
um and now she's stepping back into this dramatic leading role that's very vulnerable and very, close to a lot of people that are going to watch this, and so what she brought was just this incredible professionalism of what she does. Like, you saw it with Brian too. These,
Hmm.
you know two people that come from the British world of school, and it's a very methodical yet effortless. And Brian said the other day at the Q&A, he said, these roles, they go through you. Like, he was effortless every time he stepped on a set. And she was as well. So it was working with Kate was, yeah, it was like a master class with both of them every time.
Getting to do two Q&As in big theaters, I think, is really cool. Have you had a favorite, as a musician, as an actor, a favorite fan encounter, favorite fan interaction, a favorite feedback moment?
You know, yeah, I mean, honestly, just this week when I was leaving, the hours after the second screening, even the first, but the second one yesterday, um, somebody came up, and I think, I had a lovely Moscow Mule in my stomach, I believe, after dinner, and we're walking just down the street, and somebody stopped and took a picture with me, saying that they, really enjoyed the film, and that they hated and they loved to hate my character. Like, that was such a pleasant interaction. But I think, on the music side, anytime someone gets a tattoo of your name on them or something, I mean, it's hard to kind of. I wish there was a fan that was at the premiere that had like a Brian Cox portrait on his like hind leg.
I would,
I'd be like,
I would have happily gotten one of those. I don't have any tattoos, but if I
there's
got
one
a
out
first
there.
one, that would be the one that I would probably want to get.
There's a tattoo of Agamemnon somewhere on someone's body.
You've seen a lot of fans that have tattooed your name or your face onto their
no name, signature, like that's it's it's a very jarring thing when someone presents something like that to you. They're like, look, and you're like, oh, what have you done? Like, do you know me, man?
Must have meant a lot to them. I guess that's
No, I mean it did. It's just really hard to wrap my head around.
right.
The things I tattoo on my body are like party jokes and things that absolutely, they don't have a sort of significant. I don't have like a Boston logo on my body. Though
Boston,
I do.
Boston the band or Boston the city?
Yeah, Boston the band.
Yeah, Boston.
That first Boston record is pretty much flawless.
Yeah, More Than a Feeling. Great song.
7 hits on that record.
7. Yeah.
7 big ones.
Man. Okay, you've been in the world. You've been in the world of this film. You've been in the world of this of your music, obviously. Tell me something, and with your wife's stuff we've talked about. Tell me something as a fan. What's something that you've listened to, something that you've watched, something you've been really into recently?
I loved Matthew Good's performance in The Offer. I think it was the coolest Bob Evans I've ever seen. Like, I mean, or just someone of that era. I think it's such a hard thing to sell authenticity when you're going so full-on Bob Evans. I mean, that's how people actually talked back in the 70s. For those people who don't know, The Offer is this true story of the making of The Godfather, which was starring Miles Teller and Matthew Good and Juno Temple. It's fantastic. I don't know if you saw it, but yeah.
You know what I originally thought of, and this is what when you said Matthew Good, I'm immediately thinking Matthew Good, the musician. The Canadian musician. I thought you were giving a shout out to Canada because you were
maybe I was. For those of you tuning in just now, yeah. I love the Matthew Good Canadian music scene.
They're both.
Yeah, no, it's a fortunate name. There's talent in that name.
Okay, one more thing just on that same vein. The ultimate high as a musician, I imagine, not only people tattooing things of you on them, but performing on a stage in front of, 50, 100,000 people. What's the ultimate high as an actor for you?
The ultimate high was the first day after that ridiculous scene with Cox. Came up and he shook my hand. He said, "Nice work, lad." And I called my wife immediately. I think I may have cried. I was just so emotionally and physically exhausted. And at the end of it, the only one who could, give me wings would have been him to be able to. I mean, to say something like that to me was such a generous thing that he probably didn't. He's like, "Well, I just told him, like, good job, buddy." Like that just meant a lot coming from someone like that guy, whom I felt just so humbled to be able to share a screen with.
Yeah, well, people have to pay, hundreds of dollars on Cameo to get him to say kindly fuck off to them.
Get an Eric Roberts happy birthday.
Yeah. Listen,
I got a Gary Busey one once. Somebody sent me a Busey. It was actually like so awesome to me.
Nice. Tyson, it's been even cooler than I could have imagined. I really enjoyed everything that you had to say.
Cheers.
Get the feedback.
Appreciate the thoughtful questions, my friend.
All right. Take care. Enjoy the greenery.
Yes. Cheers. Excuse me, I'll just be tending to my plants now.